I am Ratun Kumar Chandra. You are listening from my literary works by named A Devine Presentation, which is a collection of 10 pieces poetic playlets. One of them is Save Me God. Here is the part of this playlet based on divine science. My friends, this is a glorious moment in my life that I have got chance to meet with you here. And this is not only my meeting with you, this is my prayer to you as the fruitful penance of my life, the parts of which I disclose to you, as there is difference in every figure, fame and fortune of us in the game of our lives on earth. In such way, there is difference in everyone's game of life who are in front of you for the fulfillment of one's own life being known by God, so that they can be rescued by God divinely from the queue of our lives earthly. That's why God has made a divine owner of the honor of our sky on earth, who bears the witness of the divine kindness of God on earth by a lesson of the divine judgment of God for the management of the deliverance of our lives in the history of our civilization on earth. My friends, I have given the oblation of my devotion and dedication for my salvation in life by God, from where I have perceived the secrecy of my relation with divinity by my own intuition, which I present to you to enlighten the limelight of our civilization on earth. As the sun rotates itself in its own place clockwise, so there is a rotational gravitation around it which attracts earth to rotate itself in its own place clockwise, to take the round of the sun in rotating position clockwise, because only a rotating object can rotate another one around it, as the shape of the sun is circular, but the shape of the earth is not circular, which is except having its pole in it. So these poles are being charged by the charge of the sun for being the in charge of our lives as dipoles, that is positive and negative poles of earth. And as the sun rotates itself in its own place, so these dipoles are being attracted and rotated by the sun consequently clockwise, so that earth can rotate itself in its own place to take the round of the sun in rotating position clockwise, due to which there is birth and death, male and female, as well as day and night on earth whole round the year. And by counting of this day and night, we have come to know that earth takes 365 days to take a round of the sun, because it is not possible to count the rotation of the sun due to the bright light in and around the sun, and due to the big figure of the sun. My friends, God is the greatest scientist in the universe, and I am trying to disclose the secrecies of the creativeness of divine hardware and divine software as the blessed one of God in our lives. The exercises of the dipoles of Earth creates an area of the rotational vibrating atmospheric pressure of air, that is vapor, for our breathings. The breathings of Earth, the breathings of nature, as well as the breathings of our lives, even during the period of sleeping in our lives. The vibrating atmospheric pressure keeps us alive in our lives by the sources of the forces of air of vibrating breathings automatically for the existence and resistance till the deliverance of our lives from earth. My friends, actually the water is being vaporized by the heat of the sun on earth. As we know that 3 parts of earth is full of water out of 4. So the existing vapor is being rebounded by the rotating dipoles of the boundary of the rotating earth for the vibrating atmospheric pressure of air for breathings of our lives on earth due to the rotation of the earth in its own place. We stage the round of the sun in rotating position. The rotational vibrating condition of the atmospheric pressure of air for our breathings are the indications of the reverse of our lives on earth. So if life is a question, deliverance is the answer of that question. My friends, as 3 parts of earth is full of water out of 4, so when the earth is in closest position of the sun, the heat of the sun is maximum on earth. So the vaporization of water is also maximum to maximize the growth of the breath of earth, weight of earth and the heat of earth, which develops cloud in the sky to beat down the heat by the rain. When the earth starts to create distance from the sun and the season of lives change on earth to make fresh our lives on earth. When the earth loses the growth of its breath by losing its weight, breath and heat in it, while creating the distance of earth from the sun, due to which water starts to turn into ice, and when there is maximum ice on earth, the vaporization of water is minimum to minimize the growth of the breath weight and heat of earth. And at last, the earth is attracted by the sun to regain its heat, breath and weight in it. When the ice starts to melt on earth by the heat of the sun, due to which the vaporization of water increases on earth, and the earth gains its weight, breath and heat gradually while coming closest to the sun. When the earth completes the rotation of its breath, which maintains the breath of the nature and creatures on earth, as well as the breath of our lives for the game of our paradise in the sky during the period of changing the color of seasons on earth, which are derived from the sun, until the end of the favor of this cycle, our civilization is safe on earth. But when the balance of this cycle will lose its favor gradually from us, from that time on it will be the period of danger for our civilization on earth as a lesson of immortality for the mortality due to the vibrating atmospheric pressure of air on us as well as on earth. So we can say it is a lengthy procedure of natural disaster on earth for the birth and death of our civilization gradually, as well as we can say it is a natural way of charging the earth also for its fresh capacity to bear the responsibilities and the facilities of our fresh civilization during the course of time on earth. so that we can realize our relation with divinity and we can be enriched by the sense of divinity, practically to avoid cruelty in our lives for our salvation in lives by God. My friends, our lives are derived from the cycle of the internal relation between the sources of the sun and earth, which are the causes of our existence and resistance on earth, so that we can get our deliverance in lives. So these sources are so sensitive that we feel it in changing of our seasons on earth. When the earth starts to create distance from the sun, trees also create distance from the sun, due to which the period of blooming starts on earth, which bends the trees by creating distance from the sun, due to the weight of the growing fruit gradually on the trees, till the fruit mature to be free from the trees gradually, when the trees complete the rotation of its breath by coming again closest to the sun in its original position, with the rotation of the breath of earth to regain its breath again before reaching farthest from the sun. Which maintains the generation of our lives for the progression of the nature and creatures on earth. And at last, when the earth is attracted by the sun, the earth starts to come close to the sun. So the trees come also close to the sun when the period of blooming starts on earth, which bends the trees by creating distance from the sun due to the weight of the growing fruit gradually on the trees till the fruit mature to be free from the trees gradually, when the trees complete the rotation of its breath by coming again closest to the sun in its original position, with the rotation of the breath of earth to regain its breath again before reaching closest to the sun. So this is a divine procedure of presenting the homogeneity of our molded lives and nature in the mold of the atmospheric pressure of earth. So the existence, resistance, as well as the deliverance of our lives on earth and in such way the trees complete the breath of its own during the breathings of the earth. My friends, as we know that earth takes breath, so we take breath in such way. As we die during the course of time, earth will die also during the course of time. And as we lose our breathings after death, in such way, earth will lose also its breathing after death, when there will be no change in the season of the atmosphere on earth due to the cavity of the gravity during the aging of earth, when the dipoles of the earth will lose its sharpness to move around itself in its own place during the course of taking the round of the sun, and automatically the growth of earth will lose its capacity of breathing for our birth, and according to the and as a dead one, the earth will be helpless to move around itself in its own place during the period of taking the round of the sun, when the earth will be dead for our civilization and we will be no more for our civilization on earth. When the earth will pass through the various stages on it, as ice stage, hot stage, and rainy stage, etc., which will be for the unlimited period. the period of recharging the earth by the charge of the sun for recovering its loss till it moves around itself in its own place, during the period of taking the round of the sun, when again there will start the period of breathing by earth, the for changing the seasons of the atmosphere on it, so that there can be the growth of the nature and creatures on earth, for the beginning of the journey of the reverse of our new civilization on earth. So this is a chance of surprise for the prize to those who are in praise of the rays of divine liberty in their lives on earth. So we are the wonderful architect of our lives by the sources of the sun and earth, which are forced so critically and intellectually by the perceiving of this secrecy can make us free from the weakness of our cruelty for moral illusion and pollution towards the immortality for the solution of our lives on earth. So during the period of the favor of the sources of earth in our lives, we and our civilization are safe on earth. And when there will start the period of the gradual disfavor of the sources of earth in our lives, we and our civilization will lose ourselves gradually on earth due to the vibrating atmospheric pressure on us as well as on earth. And in such way, there will be the end of our present civilization on earth, when there will start the period of recharging the earth by the charge of the sun for the growth of our new civilization on earth, with the motion of the sun and earth for the emotion, creation and the generation of our lives on earth. My friends, dawn and dusk are the mask of our laboratory on earth. So rotation is the source of the births and deaths of our lives. Rotation is the source of the generation of our lives. Rotation is the source of the gravitation of our lives, as our sun, earth and we are related one another, made for one another and complementary one another. So let us be the owner of our lives so that we can be the gainer of our paradise in the sky. My friends, as diversity of our shapes are derived from the diversity of the shape of earth, sources of earth and the movement of earth, whereas the earth is X-shaped, so the shape of the area of the atmospheric pressure is also X-shaped on earth. And as our earth is being attracted and rotated by the sun, so we are also being attracted and rotated by the sun within the area of the vibrating atmospheric pressure on earth, which is as the house of the earth by the atmospheric pressure for our births, due to which the growth of our lives are also being accepted on earth. And as we move in circular way, so we grow gradually to lose gradually on earth, where the existence, resistance and the deliverance of our lives take place, so that there can be the opportunity of being free by God for the fondness of our divine liberty in lives, and we can be free from the reverse of our lives on earth, because God is the creator and ruler of this great automatic divine technology for our civilization and salvation on earth. My friends, our souls keep alive our bodies on earth, which are the parts of air of our atmosphere, as a source of creating our own immortal relation by God in our lives. But as our bodies are the product of the month of earth, so our bodies are mortal, because we are in the area of the atmospheric pressure of air on earth, as the physics in the air which can't alive being out of water. In such way, we can't alive being out of the area of the atmospheric pressure of air on earth. For the recurring process of the occurring births and deaths of our lives, but as God is the creator and ruler of this great atomic divine technology for our lives, so When we will be believed by God, we will be released by God as the stars of our lives in the sky from earth. My friends, as the earth is being attracted by the sun, so we are also being attracted by the sun to grow upwards towards the sun on earth according to the shape of earth in condition of the motion of earth for us, and as there are the favor of the sources of earth during the courses of our lives in the area of the atmospheric pressure of our births and deaths on earth, where we are being sandwiched in between the opposite gravitational power of the sun and earth, which is accept. So the growth of our lives are also being accepted, due to which we grow gradually to lose gradually on earth, to take the round of the sun in rotating position. So there is birth and death on earth due to the rotation of the sun, earth and our lives, which are complementary one another in the mold of the earth of our lives, where we are bound to take the round of the births and deaths consequently on earth. My friends, it is a natural phenomena which we face among us, which is our fate, which is the lesson of God in our lives to realize the position of God so that we can create our relation with God in our lives. My friends, the fame of the game of our lives glorify the earth and the sky, where the shape of our bodies are bound by the shape of our parents, and the motion of our bodies are bound by the motion of our parents as the sun and earth. So the civilization of our lives on earth are derived from the shape of earth, sources of earth and the motion of earth. But as the sources of our lives are limited on earth, so the civilization of our lives on earth are also limited, because the sources as the inside materials of the earth for our lives, which we are digging from the inside of the earth gradually, that will make the earth empty and unable in future to meet the need of our civilization on earth, and at last the earth will lose its natural values, being weak and sick as aged one, to lose our civilization on it. When our civilization will also be weak and sick for seeking the reverse in the diversity of creatures on earth due to the lack of the proper sources of our lives on earth. My friends, once upon a time, there was the beginning of our civilization on earth. When we have grown up gradually, and during the course of time, there will be the end of our civilization on earth. The different picture of the same thing as the birth and death of our civilization on earth. Only difference is the earth is being recharged by the charge of the sun through the diversity of the atmospheric pressure on earth. Our lives are being recharged also by the charge of the sun through the diversity of the creatures on earth, according to the deeds of one's own need, which are the access of the creatures for human beings on earth, as well as the access of the human beings for deliverance in the sky. My friends, at last, let us know the secrecy of the divine science in our lives, as the mechanism and function of our bodies are the sources of the existence and resistance of our lives on earth. The divine science is the science, the mechanism and function and the conjunction of the sun and earth with our lives are the sources of the courses of the existence and resistance and the deliverance of our lives on earth, where the deliverance of our lives are derived from the divine owner on earth, and the divine owner is derived from God in the sky. As the sun is the only source of energy in our lives, which rotates itself in its own place, so there are motion, emotion, and light for our lives on earth. And when one comes in knowledge of the sun on earth as the divine owner for the lesson of the importance of being divine in lives through the divine owner on earth, for being free from the cage of the atmospheric pressure of earth in front of the light of the divine liberty of our lives in the sky. So the incident of deliverance is a divine festival in honor of the coronation of the divine owner on earth by God, when the manner of the divine honor is displayed through the divine owner by the surprise of the gateway of divine paradise for our lives in the sky. A most sensitive and responsive divine chapter for the study of those who are made for the honor of the divine owner in fond of being the divine gainer in lives. A wonderful display of the divine mercy and mercy for the divine democracy of our paradise in the sky through the divine owner on earth. When the divine bodies, that is, sun, moon, and stars, are within reach of our lives on earth, through the divine owner for the divine coverage in lives. So if we don't try to be free from the edges of the cages of the atmospheric pressure on earth, if we don't try to be free from the Jew of creatures on earth, the time will come when our earth will be unable to feed us, and due to the lack of the sources of our lives on earth, we will lose ourselves and our civilization gradually on earth. So let there be the role of the divine goal of our lives on earth, which is beyond from all tricks of alluring God for deliverance in our lives. This is a festival of deliverance by God in the world in return of our festival of God in lives. So in this festival of God, the deliverance of our lives are derived from the divine owner in the world, and the divine owner in the world is derived from God, the Son, the Almighty in the sky, because as our lives are derived from the law and order of the government of our lives on earth, in such way the deliverance of our lives are derived from the divine law and order of God in the sky of the world of our lives on earth. My friends, as we are being recharged gradually and continuously by the charge of the sun, so we are being polished naturally, mentally, and physically for the diversion of our lives on earth constantly as the earth grows for growing our lives, till the access of the opportunity of divine success for the proof of the divine owner by the judgment of the divine management for the arrangements of our deliverance in the sky on earth, so that the courses of the creations of our lives and the forces of the positions of our lives can be the sources of the divine promotion for the salvation of our lives in the sky, when our lives will be helpless for us, when our earth will be helpless for us. Our sky will open the door for us, and we will be promoted in the sky from the soul of our lives on earth due to the essence of the presence of the divine owner for being divine on earth, so that we can be free from the rivers of our lives on earth. As our atmosphere is the creator of our lives on earth, so the diversity of our atmosphere is the diversity of our lives on earth. Where the rays of the sun creates an atmosphere of grace for the ways of creatures on earth, and we develop as the other creatures on earth. as we are able enough to develop ourselves with the foresightedness of the wit of our brain according to the capacities of absorbing and acquiring the right of our lives in front of our own paradise in the sky. So the diversity of our lives varies from the earth of our lives to the stars of our paradise in the sky. My friends, as the diversity of the mechanism and function of the sun and earth are the sources of the diversity of our lives on earth, in such way, the diversity of the mechanism and function of our fathers and mothers are the sources of the diversity of our births. To draw our lives in the vibrating atmospheric pressure of earth, till the physical capacities of our lives failure to bear the souls of our lives, so our souls are derived from the goal of our lives for the generation of our lives by the emotion of the vibrating atmospheric pressure of our lives for the motion on earth. And the situation of our lives are the gainer or loser of the souls of our lives when the vibrating suitable atmosphere of earth is the source of the growing and losing of our lives as we develop and dissolve on earth. So the remainings of our bodies on earth were the sources as the seeds of our lives for the beginning of the growth of our lives. Rest of all are the sources of the diversity of the vibrating atmospheric pressure on us as well as on earth, where the wit of our brain for the existence and resistance till the deliverance of our lives in the sky on earth, where through the diversity of the physical molds as the male and female for the revolution of the growth of our civilization on earth. And in such way, I have disclosed the secrecy of the mercy of the signs of divine bodies for our divine relation and realization in lives, so that we can avoid the senseless cruelty for the essence of the ability of divine abode in our lives on earth. My friends, we will not live here forever on earth, because God has disclosed the secrecy of the privacy of love to me by fulfilling the dream of my divine paradise in the sky. As I have lost me here at the cost of my life again and again for the gain of my paradise in the sky, and at last I am proud of God with the pain of my parting from earth, because God has created a fashion of salvation before the end of the ration of earth, by presenting me the right of the divine owner on earth, for the manner of the right of our divine paradise in the sky, when the earth will be unable to generate our birth. Due to the aging of earth, as the aging of our mothers, who are unable to generate our births after the sensitive ages of them for our births, whereas our Son is our Father of fathers, the Divine Father for us, and our earth is our Mother of mothers, the Divine Mother for us. So naturally we will lose ourselves from earth due to the helplessness of the aging of our Divine Mother, the earth, for generating our lives after the sensitive ages of earth for our births. The race of our lives are based on the game of the birth and death of our lives on earth. So we have protected the birth and death of our lives by the diversity of the cages of the water, electricity and internet, etc., to save the image of our lives in the cage of the atmosphere pressure for our rivers on earth, till the end of the blooming capacities of earth for our births, which are the sources of our earthly science in lives, whereas the divine science is the science of making us free, the souls of our lives from the cage of the vibrating atmospheric pressure of earth, for the goal of our lives in the sky before the end of the roll of earth for our lives. My friends, as there are the remainings of our bodies after death on earth, which are as the bladder of the seeds of our lives for being developed by the suitable vibrating atmospheric pressure of earth as the beginning of the growth of our lives on earth, so we were so ugly and poor physically and mentally in lives due to the lack of the proper physical molds of our lives, while during the course of time there were the diversity of the male and female for the molded production of our lives, which created a surprise of the caliber of human civilization gradually by our divine promotion in lives. My friends, we can't save ourselves from the mortality of earth. So immortality is a dream which can save us from the same of mortality on earth. So this is a chance of our lives, this is a challenge of our lives, when according to the instruction of immortal paradise, we can avail the surprise of immortality for being out from the journey of mortality on earth. My friends, our senses are being charged by the alertness of our lives, without which we are dead in our lives. So the overall alertness should be there in our lives to win the game of our lives, as life is a game of mortality, where immortality is the goal of our lives. So our souls should be so great to adjust with the circumstances of our lives. There may be the divine circumstances or the earthly circumstances, where divine chances are rare and fair for the faith of our lives, the faith which is immortal. When the immortality creates link with the mortality of earth for the lesson of our lives, for the fashion of our lives, till our divine promotion by deliverance in our lives, for our own paradise in the sky before the end of the period of divine performance on earth. My friends, we take a lot of care and compassion for the births of our lives, but the lack of care and compassion can be the causes of death of our lives, though the death is a part of our lives. In such way, we have taken a lot of care and sacrifice for the price of our lives on earth, but the lack of care and sacrifice can be the causes of being hopeless on earth. Though the death is also a part of life of earth, as our lives, when the earth will be unable to lead and feed our lives, when we will be mature enough to do or die in our lives, after knowing the voice of heaven, choice of heaven, for the surprise of the gateway of heaven in our lives on earth. Definitely, this is a wonderful blend of our deed and emotion for the divine promotion of our lives. According to the wonderful circumstances of our atmosphere, by the mechanism and function of the sun and earth, where the suitable power of the vibrating atmospheric pressure is the source of the beginning and end of our lives, as a chance of getting the abode of God in the sky through the presence and through the presence and presence of the divine owner, for the opportunity of the deliverance before the end of our performance on earth. How delicate love is hidden our lives in our atmosphere by the vibrating condition of air, which are the sources of our breathings, sources of our awakings, and the sources of our lastings on earth, as well as the source of blooming source of perfuming and the source of blending the atmosphere by the force of one's own, where our breathings are unseen as God, to be perfumed by the virtues of our lives in honor of the light of the sky for the manner of being divine gainer in lives. How wonderful nature is adopted by us for blending our lives with the nature of the sun and earth, where the sun is our father of fathers, the divine father on earth, the earth is our mother of mothers, the divine mother in lives. So the gravitation of our mothers are derived from the gravitation of our fathers, as the gravitation of our earth is derived from the gravitation of our sun, who has exposed me in all over the sky of the world as the divine owner for the manner of the service of divine gainer in lives through the presence, and the sense of the divine owner on earth. Thank you. সুইচ বন্ধ করে দাও সঙ্গী।